This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, good morning, all of you. After a long time, we are going to discuss this digital signal processing subject. I think you are familiar with these concepts. Just in this class, we are going to revise those concepts once again. So let us start with our introduction to digital signal processing. Okay, let's going to discuss about what is the definition of the signal first. Okay, we are already familiar with what is a signal first. So basically, signal is a variable which carries some information. Okay, we can also define a signal like this also. A signal is a physical quantity which carries some information. Right. Uh, in our daily life, we may encounter different types of signals. If you see the traffic signals, so what does it gives? The traffic signal. So traffic signal gives us some information, right? When to stop and when to move the vehicle, right? So like that, any signal is a physical quantity, so which carries some information. Now coming to the classification of signals. So signals can be one dimensional or a multi-dimensional. So what does it means? Dimensional means. So basically, if you see our speech signal or voice signal, basically it is a one-dimensional signal. So here, what is the independent variable in our speech signal? So basically, in our space signal, the independent variable is time, right? So like that, we can have more than one independent variable. So that is called as a multi-dimensional signal. Now let us see the examples of one-dimensional signal and multi-dimensional signal. Okay, coming to the formal definition of a signal, a function of one or more variables, so which conveys some information on the nature of a physical phenomenon. So that is called as a signal, all right? So if you see real-time examples, so voltage signal, a current signal, or heartbeat, so that is also a signal, blood pressure, temperature, and vibration. So these are the few examples of our signals, right? Now coming to the one-dimensional signal. So what is meant by one-dimensional signal? So one-dimensional signal is a function or a signal which depends upon a single independent variable. Example, space signal. Now let us see how the space signal looks like. So this is our space signal, right? Then coming to the multi-dimensional signal. So what is meant by multi-dimensional signal? So here the signal depends on two or more independent variables. Example, image. So basically image is a two-dimensional light intensity function. So here the signal, what is the type of signal? Image is a two-dimensional signal, right? So here the brightness of the image, brightness and intensity, we can take it as two dimensions, right? And then coming to, we are moving to the digital signal processing, right? So now we have completed what is meant by a signal. Then coming to the digital signal processing, it comprises of two words basically, digital signal and processing. Now coming to what is meant by a processing of a signal, right? So what is the meaning of processing? Basically, the processing means we are performing certain operations on the signal to extract the information, useful information from the signal. All right. So that processing techniques may be two types, that is analog processing techniques and digital processing techniques. Now let us see what is meant by digital signal processing. So if we are using some digital techniques to process the signal, so that means to perform different operations on the signal to extract the useful information, then that comes under digital signal processing, right? And then coming to the digital signal processing, which type of hardware we are using in this digital signal processing. What are the components we are going to use in this digital signal processing? Right, basically we will have a digital signal processor which is specifically designed for digital signal operations and digital signal processing operations, right? And now coming to the digital signal processing, what are the advantages over analog signal processing, and what are the applications where we are using this digital signal processing techniques? Now let us see. Okay, if you see the elements of digital signal processing, as already we have discussed, the main elements, what are the elements of this digital signal processing? Right, the main element is a digital signal processor. So what is the nature of input it is taking, the digital signal processor, and what is the nature of output it is giving? Obviously it is a digital, all right, but practically in the real time all the signals or real-time signals are analog in nature. So if you want to process those signals by using certain type of digital signal processors, we need to convert that analog signal into digital signal first, right? So that's why I'm using the first block as a digital analog to digital converter, right? See here, what is the first block? I am taking the analog input signal, right, and it is applied to the A to D converter. We know the function of A to D converter. Yes, what is the function of A to D converter? So basically it is a analog to digital converter. That means it takes the analog input and it converts to digital equivalent. So now after that we are getting the digital signal, and that digital signal is connected to the digital signal processor, right? So now it is going to perform different operations on this digital input signal. So operations means, you know, the operations on the signals. What are the basic operations on the signals we can perform? Like scaling operations, shifting operations, signal addition, signal multiplication, like that. We can manipulate that signal, and after that finally we are going to get the processed output as again a digital output, right? Then what is the next stage? Finally we want our analog signal back. So how can you get that analog output again from this digital output? Again we are performing the reverse process of A to D conversion, that is D to A conversion. So that means digital to analog conversion, right? This digital output can be converted back to your original analog signal by using digital to analog converter. So finally we are getting this analog output signal. So these are the main elements of a digital signal processing system, right? Now coming to what are the advantages of digital signal processing. So why we are preferring this digital signal processing techniques over analog signal processing techniques, right? Now let us see. The first advantage is accuracy can be controlled by choosing the word length. So what do you mean by word length in digital signal processing? Yes. So here the accuracy depends upon your choosing word length. So that means we are converting that analog signal into digital one. After that we are performing some operations on the digital signal, right? So for any processor, so there is a length of the processor means size of the processor means it can have 16-bit length, 16-bit processor, 32-bit processor, or 64-bit processor, like that, right? So here our accuracy is depending upon the choosing word length, right? The number of bits used to represent the data. Then coming to another advantage, that is repeatable. We can perform this digital signal operations, digital signal processing on a digital signal processor, or that may be a digital computer. So that means we can write a program, simply a MATLAB program, to perform a digital signal operation, right? So later if you want to apply to another system, if you want to change that program, we can simply change that program and we can implement for another application, right? So there is a flexibility also that can be achieved with this software implementation. All right. So another advantage is digital storage is cheap, right? So how we are storing the data in this case? So we are going to store the digital data in digital memory devices like memory card, CD, compact disc, right? So nowadays we are seeing that digital storage devices are very cheaper, right? Next, coming to the digital information can be encrypted for security, right? There are different encryption algorithms to provide security to our digital data. So because of this, a lot of advantages of digital signal processing, we are preferring this digital signal processing techniques over analog signal processing, right? Then coming to applications where we are using this digital signal processing. Now let us see the applications. So where we can use this digital signal processing? So the first one is audio and speech signal processing, right? And the second one is sonar and radar signal processing. So what is meant by radar? I think you are familiar with this term radar. Already we have discussed this one. Radio detection and ranging. All right. And sonar means it is also similar to radar, but here we are using the sound signals for the detection. Sonar, sound navigation and ranging. Then coming to sensor array processing, spectral estimation, statistical signal processing, and digital image processing. So this is also an important area where we are using this digital signal processing. I already told that image is a two-dimensional signal. So that's why this can be implemented by using digital signal processing, right? That is nothing but digital image processing. So where we are using in digital image processing, these DSP algorithms can be used in digital image processing also. So where we are using this in this digital image processing, especially while we are collecting some images from satellites, right? That satellite images may be added with some noise that is disturbing our original image. So now if you want to extract the original image or original information from that picture, we want to eliminate that noise, right? So in that case, we can use a filter generally. So what is the purpose of a filter? So filter removes the unwanted signals, right? It allows only the wanted frequency components or wanted information. So in that case, we can use our digital signal processing algorithms. Similarly, signal processing for communications, right? Communications, biomedical signal processing, speech codec in cell phone. So these are the applications of digital signal processing in different areas. Now coming to what are the limitations, right? So we have seen the advantages. Now we'll look into the limitations. What are the limitations of digital signal processing? So basically, in any application where we are using this analog to digital and digital to analog converters, there is an error, some type of error. While we are converting analog signal to digital or converting back from digital to analog signal, uh, we may get some type of error. What is that error? So basically, what are the steps involved in converting converting analog to digital? It involves different stages. The first stage is you are converting a continuous time signal into discrete time signal first, right? And then we are converting that discrete time signal into digital signal by using the process called as quantization. So that means basically we have two steps in converting analog to digital signal. That is conversion from continuous time signal to discrete time signal, and after that discrete time to digital signal. So it involves two process, that is sampling and quantization. So when you are performing this quantization process, there will be a quantization error. That means we are approximating, we are rounding off our amplitude values to the nearest integer values. So there may get some quantization error. Similarly, there is one more error, that is sampling causes loss of information, right? You know the sampling theorem. While we are performing the sampling, so what should be the sampling rate, the ideal sampling rate? It should be the Nyquist rate, right? So what is meant by Nyquist rate? Our sampling signal frequency must be at least twice the maximum frequency of the input signal, that is fs equal to 2fm. That is the minimum sampling frequency required. So otherwise, if you take fs less than 2fm, then what happens? Yes, we will get some aliasing effect is there. So that is a limitation of DSP. And one more thing is a limited speed of process and quantization and round of errors. Already we have discussed this one. So far we have discussed the introduction of DSP system and what are the elements of DSP system and what are the advantages and what are the limitations and applications in different areas. Now let us move into the signal classification, right? So basically we can classify signals into two types. Yes, what are they? Continuous time signal and discrete time signal. And further they are classified into different types based upon their properties. Now let us see the classification. The first classification is continuous time and discrete time signal. And both these continuous time and discrete time signals can be further classified into periodic and aperiodic signal or non-periodic signals, energy and power signals, causal and non-causal signal, deterministic and random signals, even and odd signals, right? So we are all familiar with these types of signals, right? Then move to the definition of these different types of signals, right? Now let us see first what is the continuous time signal and what is discrete time signal. Okay, okay, now it is clear. Okay, and so what is meant by continuous time signal? Generally, look this image, this graph. So basically this is a continuous time signal. So what can you observe from this? The signal is defined for each and every value of time continuously, right? If you observe, at each and every value of time, the signal is defined, it is having some value. But coming to the discrete time signal, this signal is defined at discrete instance of time only. So that means if you take the x-axis as n in this discrete time, so n takes only the integer values, 0, plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2, like that. So this signal is defined at discrete instance of time only, right? That is the basic difference between continuous time and discrete time signal. Then coming to the next classification. So what is the next classification? Sorry. The next classification is periodic signals and aperiodic signals. Okay, before going to discuss about those signals, now let us see. Our subject is dealing with discrete time signals only. So that's why let us start our discussion with discrete time signal representation. Okay, so now we have seen what is a discrete time signal. Now let us move on to the representation, how this discrete time signal is represented. So basically we have different methods to represent a discrete time signal. That is first one, graphical representation. So if you see the graphical representation here, So what is the x-axis here? N, small n. So that is taken as time, and this signal amplitude is represented on y-axis, and that is represented as x of n. So here n takes the values 0, 1, 2, 3, -1 and -2. Now what is the amplitude of this signal at n equal to 1? Obviously it is 3. So that means the amplitude of the signal is 3 at n equal to 1. So that is also nothing but a sample. Okay. Similarly, we can have different amplitudes at different values of n. They are different samples, right? X of -2. What is the x of -2 value? That is -3. So this is graphical representation. Then coming to the next representation, that is functional representation. So instead of representing graphically, it is convenient to represent a signal in functional form also, that is by the signal definition itself. So if you see the example here, I'm defining a signal x of n, which is having some value -3 for n equal to -2, and that is equal to 2 for n equal to -1. So that means the amplitude of the signal is equal to 2 for the index n equal to -1. So that means that is functional representation. So like that you can represent a discrete time sequence or a discrete time signal by using functional representation. Then coming to the tabular representation, this is also one of the method to represent discrete time signal. You are familiar with this one. Next, coming to the sequence representation, like set x of n is equal to set of all the samples. But coming to the sequence representation, you should remember this. What is the starting index value? So we are indicating here with arrow. Look here. In sequence representation, so this arrow position indicates the 0th sample value. So that means index n equal to 0. So from this left side, it is having -1. This is -1. And this is -2. And towards right, after 0, that is 1, first sample, second sample, and third sample. So like this, we can represent a discrete time sequence, right? So we have seen the representation of a discrete time signal or a sequence in different methods. Now coming to coming to the next operations on signals. So already we have discussed our main aim is in digital signal processing is we are going to perform some operations on the signals, right? So why we are performing these operations? That means processing of signals. Our main aim is to extract the original information, right? Useful information from the signal. So that's why we are performing different mathematical operations on signals. So these basic operations on signals involves different operations like amplitude operation, that is amplitude scaling. Amplitude scaling means we are multiplying the signal by a constant k. So that means you are going to scale the amplitude, not time. For example, x of n is equal to some 2 into x of n is equal to some 2 into t. If my signal is x of n is that is x of n is equal to some n signal is there. Suppose I want to perform amplitude scaling operation here. Then I can perform x of n is equal to 2 into n. So that means each sample is multiplied with constant 2, right? That means you are performing some amplitude scaling operation there. So like that is the only amplitude scaling operation. Next, coming to shifting operation, that is time shifting. we can perform shifting, scaling, and reversal operations, right? You know this. What is the time shifting operation? Suppose if you want to delay the signal by an amount k, we can perform x of n minus k. That means delaying that signal by k units, right? Advancing the signal, that is also time shifting operation. So that can be performed by using the operation x of n plus k. So what is the meaning of x of n plus k? You are advancing the signal by k units, right? X of n plus k means. Similarly, we can perform time scaling operation also. So what is meant by time scaling operation? Yes, we can compress or we can expand the signal. In the previous case, we have multiplied the amplitude of signal by some constant k. Similarly, we can multiply our time by a constant k. That means we can compress or expand the signal depending upon the k value. Suppose I am performing this operation x of 2n. Then what is the operation done there? Whether it is compressing or expanding, that operation is called as compressing, right? Similarly, we can expand the signal by performing some operation like x of n by 2, like that. So those are time scaling operations. Then coming to time reversal. Yes, suppose a sequence x of n is there, then what is the time reversal of that sequence? X of n, x of minus n. So how can you perform this time reversal operation? By simply reversing that signal. That means you are folding that signal along n equal to 0. Then you can get the time reversal of that given signal x of n. Okay, so these are the time shifting, time scaling, and time reversal operation. Apart from this, we can perform signal addition also. So that means I want to perform addition of two discrete time signals. Then how can add two discrete time signals or discrete time sequences? Yes, it is very simple. You can perform the sample by sample addition. That is nothing but simple discrete time signal addition operation. Similarly, you can perform signal multiplication also. That is sample by sample multiplication. You know that. Okay. So here, while performing this time shifting and scaling and reversal operations, suppose I want to perform all these shifting, scaling, and reversal operations combinedly. For example, x of n is the given sequence. I want to obtain x of minus 2n plus 3, right? X of n is a given sequence. Suppose I want to obtain x of minus 2n plus 3. Now let us see what are the operations involved in this x of minus 2n plus 3. So it involves all these operations, that is time shifting is there, that is time advance, next time scaling is there, and time reversal is also there. So while performing these operations combinedly, you should take care of this operator precedence. That is, you have to perform shifting operation first, and after that scaling, and then you can perform reversal, right? So first you should perform the shifting operation. Remember this. Then after that you can perform either reversal or scaling, whatever it may be in the order. First you should perform the shifting operation. So this is about basic operations on signals. Now let us move our discussion to the classification of signals. Already we have classified the signals based upon their properties, right? Then what is meant by a periodic signal? Periodic, right? In discrete time signals, we are defining the discrete time periodic signal is said to be periodic with period n if and only if x of n is equal to x of n plus n. So where capital N is the fundamental period of the signal, right? If any discrete time signal satisfies this condition, x of n is equal to x of small n plus capital N for all values of n, right? This is mathematical condition for a periodic signal. Okay, generally how can you say that a signal is periodic? If the signal is repeating itself at regular intervals of time, right, then the signal is said to be periodic. See the example here, a periodic discrete time sequence in this image. Let us observe this. So this is our x of n, right? Whether it is having specific pattern which repeats itself. Yes, observe this signal clearly. We have a specific pattern here from 0 to n, right? After this, again the signal is repeating. That pattern is going to repeat for all values of small n, right? So now this signal is said to be periodic with period capital N. So that is the condition for periodic signals in the discrete time case. If the condition is not satisfied, then the signal is said to be non-periodic or simply a periodic signal. Right. Now coming to the example, let us see some examples of periodic signals. Okay. In the continuous time case, we know that all the sinusoidal signals are periodic, right? But it is not true in the case of discrete time sinusoidal case. What is the reason is, in the discrete time case, your sinusoidal signal is said to be periodic if and only if it is satisfying this condition, that is x of n is equal to x of n plus capital N, right? In the continuous time case, all the sinusoidal signals are periodic, said to be periodic with a period 2 pi, right? Sine and cosine, or periodic with period 2 pi. But in this case, it is not true. How can you say that a discrete time sinusoidal signal is said to be periodic? Now let us see the condition. See here. So what is the basic definition of a periodic sequence, periodic signal in discrete time case? That is x of small n is equal to x of n plus capital N for all values of small n. So here I'm taking x of n is equal to some a sine omega naught n plus theta. So here a theta represents a phase. Okay, now I am going to perform this condition. X of n is equal to x of n plus capital N, right? So what is x of n plus capital N here? So just replace this small n by n plus n. I'm going to get this expression after expansion, a sine omega naught n plus theta plus omega naught n. Okay, so now from this, this signal is said to be periodic if and only if your x of n plus capital N is equal to x of n. So to satisfy this equation, now I am taking some value of this omega naught n, omega naught into capital N. So for what values of this n, I'm going to get this capital, x of n plus capital N is equal to x of n. So from that, I'm getting this condition as omega naught n must be a multiples of 2 pi. So for these values of omega naught n, you are going to get a periodic discrete time sinusoidal sequence. So your omega naught into capital N must be equal to 2 pi into some m, right? Omega naught n is equal to 2 pi into small m, right? So from this I am getting some condition, omega naught is equal to some 2 pi m by capital N, and omega naught is equal to 2 pi into small m by capital N. Or you can find the period capital N is equal to 2 pi into small m by omega naught. So now what is capital N here? Capital N means the fundamental period. So how can you obtain this fundamental period? The least possible value of m which satisfies this n should be, yes, this should be a rational or irrational number. It should be a rational number, right? Right. So according to that, you should take the least possible value of m. And then you will get the fundamental period of that signal. Capital N is equal to 2 pi small m by omega naught. So if this condition is satisfied, then only your sinusoidal signal is said to be periodic. Discrete time sinusoidal signal is said to be periodic, right? Similarly, go to the next example, that is complex exponential sequence. Okay, now take the example of complex exponential sequence. So my x of n is equal to e power j omega naught n, right? Now how can you say that this complex exponential sequence is said to be periodic? So for that, I'm obtaining the condition here by using this mathematical expression x of n plus capital N is equal to x of n. By substituting that, so what is your x of n plus n here? Just replace small n by n plus n. And what is x of n here? E power j omega naught n. So by equating these two, you will get some condition, that is e power j omega naught n must be equal to 1. All right. According to that, your omega naught n must be equal to same multiples of integer multiples of 2 pi. This is similar to the previous one, a sinusoidal sequence case, right? Now your omega naught by 2 pi is equal to some k by n. So whatever it may be, in the previous case I have used the variable as some m. In this case I am using some k, whatever it may be. This signal is said to be periodic if and only if this omega naught by 2 pi is a ratio of two integers, small k by n or small m by n, whatever it may be. Then only that is said to be periodic. And what is the fundamental period here? Capital N. For the smallest value of integer value of k, you can find that capital N. So finally we have obtained the condition for periodicity of complex exponential sequence, right? Now let us see the next example. Okay, next classification. Coming to energy and power signals. Yes, how can you define a signal is said to be energy or a power signal? So for that, you need to be calculate these two parameters, that is energy of the signal and power of the signal. This is in the continuous time case. Okay, this is in the case of discrete time case. Your x of n is the input discrete time sequence or signal. Now you are going to perform, you are going to calculate the energy. So E is equal to summation over n equal to minus infinity to infinity mod x of n square. Similarly, I'm going to calculate the power also. Let's see, this is your energy. And coming to the power is equal to limit n tends to infinity 1 by 2 n plus 1 summation over n equal to minus n to n mod x of n square. So after calculating these two, you can classify the signal as either energy or power signal by using this definition. So a signal is said to be an energy signal. When it is said to be energy signal, your energy is finite. So as we have calculated in this case, if you are getting the energy as the finite value, it should be less than infinity, then that signal is said to be an energy signal, right? For energy signal, next coming to the power signal, how can you say that the signal is said to be a power signal? Your power should be a finite value, then you can say that a signal is a power signal, right? So we can have a signal which is neither energy nor power also. That is another type. A signal can be energy signal, a power signal, or neither type. So neither type means a signal can neither energy signal or a power signal. Okay, and a signal can be an energy signal or a power signal, but a signal cannot be both energy signal and a power signal. Remember this condition, right? How can you say that a signal is energy signal? This one, by calculating the energy, if you are getting a finite value which is less than infinity, then the signal is said to be energy signal. By calculating the power, if you are getting the finite power value as the finite, then you can say that the signal is said to be a power signal, right? So that is about the classification of energy and power signals. So what is the example of neither energy or nor power signal? Let us see. So as already we have discussed that a signal can be energy signal or power signal, or neither energy nor power, right? Now see this example. X of n is equal to small n u of n. Now I'm calculating energy of the signal in this case. So according to the definition, mathematical expression, energy of the signal is equal to limit n tends to infinity summation over n is equal to minus n to n mod x of n square, right? So here I'm calculating this one. So I got, what is the energy value here? Infinity. Now go to the power. So I'm calculating the power also by using this expression. So what about the power here? Power is also infinity. Now what is the type of signal here? What is the type of signal? It is neither energy nor power signal, because it is not satisfying both the conditions, right? Energy or power signal. So that's why this is neither energy nor power signal. So like that you can find whether the signal is power signal or energy signal or neither. Let's move on to the next classification. That is causal and non-causal signal. Yes, you know the definition of a causal signal. So what is a causal signal? Basically, a signal which is defined for positive values of time only. That means the signal value is 0 for negative values of time. So that is mathematically represented here. That is, a causal signal is 0 for n less than 0. So n less than 0 means that is negative values of time. It is only defined for positive values of time only. Then coming to anti-causal signal. So what is the meaning of anti-causal? This is opposite to causal case. If the signal is defined for only negative values of time, only for negative values of time, then the signal is said to be anti-causal, right? That means the value of the signal is 0 for n greater than 0, that is anti-causal. Otherwise, if the signal is defined for both positive and negative values of time, then the signal is said to be non-causal. See here, don't confuse with these three terms: causal, anti-causal, and non-causal, right? So what is meant by a causal signal? See here, example, x of n is equal to u of n, right? So what is meant by u of n here? U of n is the unit step sequence. So you know the definition of unit step sequence. What is the definition of unit step sequence? U of n is equal to 1 for n greater than or equal to s. U of t is equal to 1 for n greater than or equal to 0. That is in the continuous time case, right? Similarly, in the discrete time case, u of n is equal to 1 for n equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, up to so on infinity. Then what is the type of this signal, whether it is causal or non-causal? For n less than 0, the signal is 0. So that's why that is a causal signal, obviously. Similarly, if you take u of minus n, x of n is equal to u of minus n. So what is the definition of u of minus n? U of minus n is equal to 1 for n is equal to -1, -2, up to so on minus infinity. Otherwise, the signal is 0. Now, this is said to be anti-causal. Why? Because it is defined for negative values of time only. Similarly, the third example, y of n is equal to 1 for, see the index here, for what values it is 1? From -2 to 5. So the index is starting from negative value, that is -2. So it is defined for negative values of time, that is -2, -1, and for positive values of time also, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now this signal is said to be non-causal. All right. Now let us move to the next classification. Okay, right. That is deterministic and random signals. So what is the meaning of deterministic? See the definition here. If a signal can be represented mathematically, right, then that signal can be called as a deterministic signal. If a signal can be described by a mathematical equation, for example, a sinusoidal signal is there. In this case, I am taking the example x of t is equal to sine 3t. Okay, this is a continuous time signal. Okay, if you take the discrete time signal, x of n is equal to some sine 3n or 3 pi n, like that, then that is a deterministic signal, right? That means you can represent this sinusoidal signal by mathematical expression. That is deterministic signal. Then coming to random signal. So what is meant by random signal? You cannot represent the signal mathematically, right? You cannot. There is no possibility of representation as of a signal by using some mathematical expression. Then that signal is said to be a random signal. Example, a noise. Generally, thermal noise generated is a non-deterministic, it is a random signal. Now, if you observe here pattern of this signal, we cannot estimate the signal by a mathematical equation. It is having an irregular pattern, right? So that is a random signal. So these random signals can be processed or analyzed by using some statistical analysis or probability techniques, right? Probability theory. So that is about random signals. Now coming to the next classification, even and odd signals. You know the definition of even and odd signal. Even signal, what is the condition for even signal? Xe of n is equal to xe of minus n. Then the signal is said to be even signal, right? Otherwise, if x naught of n, that is x out of n, is equal to minus x out of minus n, if this condition is satisfied, then the signal is said to be an odd signal, obviously. Okay, one more thing here. You can represent any discrete time sequence in terms of odd and even components, right? X of n is equal to xe of n plus x o of n. That is, xe of n means even component, xo of n means odd component, by using this expression. So this is called signal decomposition into even and odd components. Next classification. Okay, we have completed all the types of signals, right? See, what are the signals we have seen? Continuous time signal and discrete time signal, periodic and aperiodic signal or non-periodic signals, energy and power signals, causal, non-causal signals, deterministic and random signals, even and odd signals. Okay. Then coming to the definitions of some basic signals. They are elementary signals. You know this already. So I'm skipping this one. Unit step sequence, unit impulse sequence, unit ramp sequence, unit parabolic sequence, complex exponential, and sinusoidal. I just go through this. This is unit impulse, unit step, unit ramp, and unit parabolic sequences. You know the mathematical definitions for this one. Okay. Next concept, important concept, is a representation of an arbitrary sequence. So any discrete time sequence or a signal can be represented as the weighted sum of impulses, unit impulses. So this is the property of one of the properties of impulse function. So if you see the expression here, a sequence x of n can be represented as the infinite sum of weighted impulses. See here. So x of minus 3 into delta of n plus 3, that is the shifted impulse. X of minus 2 into delta of n plus 2, x of minus 1 into delta of n plus 1, up to so on, minus infinity to plus infinity. So this can be represented like this. X of n is equal to summation k is equal to minus infinity to infinity x of k into delta of n minus k. Right? Now coming to the properties, some properties of unit impulse. What are the properties of unit impulse? The first property is you can represent your unit impulse in terms of unit step function, unit step and delayed unit step function, right? Delta of n is equal to u of n minus u of n minus 1, and this one is shifted impulse. So here this is having delay by unit scale. Delta of n minus k is equal to 1 for n equal to k and 0 for n not equal to k. So like that, x of n is equal to the weighted sum of unit impulses. So remember this condition. We are going to use this condition in deriving the output of a LTI system. Okay, this is an important concept, representation of an arbitrary sequence. Okay, so now we completed all the types of signals and the signal definition, right? We have seen the different types of signals. Now coming to the system here. So what is meant by a system first? Generally, the system takes the input signal, which process and gives the output, or which produces the output, right? That is called as a system. Now coming to the discrete time system. So here our discrete time system processes the discrete time sequence or discrete time signal and gives the corresponding output. So that is called as discrete time system. Now let us see the examples of a system. The first example, a circuit involving a capacitor can be used as a system, can be viewed as a system that transforms the source voltage signal to the voltage across the capacitor. So this can be termed as a system, right?
and a CD player. So CD player is also a system, right? A DVD player, CD player. So what actually it is doing, CD player takes the input signal on the CD and transforms it into a signal sent to the loudspeaker, right? Actually, our audio is recorded on the CD, audio signal, and it is stored on the CD. Whenever you are playing that CD, that information is collected from the CD and it is going to play back through the loudspeaker. So that means reverse process. The data is stored in the form of digital, and that is converted back to analog form by using digital to analog converter, and after that the signal is transformed to the loudspeaker. From that loudspeaker we can listen the audio. That is also a system, and a communication system generally. And there are several types of systems. Now let us see a system. How can a system is represented? Okay, a system is a black box. You can read the system is a black box here. So which takes some input, that is x of n input signal, and which transforms or which process that signal and gives the corresponding output y of n, right? In this case we are considering only discrete time system. Why? Because our subject is going to deal with only discrete time case, right? So that's why I am representing here discrete time system. Okay, by default take it as a discrete time system. So this discrete time system takes the input signal as x of n, which transforms that signal into some output signal y of n. So here, what is the y of n? Output is equal to transformation of your input signal x of n. So it represents the transformation. T of means represents a transformation, which may be any operation, right? For example, amplifier is there in continuous time case. The amplifier is also a system. So what is the input to the amplifier? Yes, it is a weak electrical signal. It is taking as the input signal, and after that what is it is going to perform? It is amplifying that weak input signal. That means it increases the strength of the signal. That is called as operation on that signal. What is the operation performed there? Amplification. So that amplifier system performs amplification on that input signal, and after that it gives the output signal, which is amplifier output. That is V0 of t is equal to some a into VA of t, right? So that is the example of transformation. So here see the notation, x of n represents the input or excitation, and y of n represents the output or response of the system, right? Then coming to the classification of systems. So similar to your signals, we can classify our systems into different types based upon the characteristics of the system. First classification, that is causal and non-causal system. Second one, linear, non-linear system. Time variant and time invariant. Stable, unstable. Static and dynamic. Invertible, non-invertible, FAR and IAR systems, right? Okay, let us move quickly because there is a shortage of time. You know the definitions of this causal system. What is the definition of causal system? Simply see the definition. If the present value of the output signal depends upon only the present and or past values of the input only, then it is said to be a causal system. Actually, causal systems are practically realizable. Next, non-causal system means opposite to this one. So see the definition. A system is said to be non-causal if the present value of the output signal depends only on the future values of the input signal. So that means the present output depends upon the future values. So that's why these are physically not realizable. So for mathematical purpose, we are denoting this non-causal systems, but practically they are not physically realizable. Next, coming to linear and non-linear system. You know the linear system. What is linear system? Which satisfies the principle of superposition, right? Principle of superposition and principle of homogeneity, right? By combinedly satisfying these two conditions, and then the system is said to be linear system, right? If the condition is not satisfied, then the system is said to be non-linear system. You know that one. Then coming to the time invariant or time variant systems. What is meant by time invariant system? A system is said to be time invariant system if the time delay or time advance of the input signal leads to identical time shift in the output signal. See the mathematical equation. It will be very simple. You can understand. Here I'm taking y of n comma k. So what is y of n comma k? That is output. That is output due to the delayed input, and y of n minus k, delayed output. So if both these two equations, both these values are equal, then the system is said to be time invariant system. In short form, we can say that the delayed output is equal to the output due to the delayed input. Then the system is said to be time invariant system. Otherwise, if it is not satisfied, it is time invariant, time variant system. That means they are not equal. Next, linear time invariant system. So now we are focusing on linear time invariant system, that is LTS system in our subject. Okay, there is a special importance for their mathematical tractability, and most signal processing applications involve these LTS systems. All right, now let us see how this input and output are related in LTS system. As already we have seen, a system is represented by a black box with input x of n and output y of n. So now how these two output and input are related in LTS system? See this condition, you know this one, that is they are related by a convolution operation. If the impulse response of the system is h of n, then the output is equal to the convolution of the input and impulse response. Y of n is equal to x of n convolution with h of n, right? This is also called as convolution sum, discrete convolution or convolution sum. In this way, the output, input, and impulse response of a linear time system are related. Remember this condition. We moving to the next classification, that is stable and unstable systems. You know the condition for what is a stable system. A system is said to be bounded input and bounded output stable if every bounded input results in bounded output. So in mathematical representation, we can represent like this. The modulus of x of n should be less than or equal to mx. That should be a finite value, that is less than infinity. That means the signal is bounded here, right? So for this bounded input, sorry, so for this bounded input, the system produces a bounded output. Then the system is said to be a bounded input, bounded output, stable system. Otherwise, you can define this Bibo stability in terms of impulse response also. Now see the condition in terms of impulse response. The system is said to be stable if its impulse response is absolutely summable. So that means the summation over n is equal to minus infinity to infinity mod h of n should be a finite value. Then the system is said to be Bibo stable. Otherwise, it is unstable system. In terms of impulse response, we can represent like this. Next, static system and dynamic system. So what is meant by static system? See the definition, its output signal depends on present values of the input signal only. It does not depend on past or future values. It depends only on present values of the input. Then the system is said to be a static system. And it is also called as a memoryless system. Why? Because your present output depends upon the present values of the input only. It does not depend on past values. So there is no need of storing that past outputs or past inputs. So that's why this is also called as memoryless system. Example, y of n is equal to x of n whole square, like this. You can verify this one. And then coming to the dynamic system, it is opposite to that one. So here the output depends upon the past values as well as future values of the input signal also. And then coming to the important one, that is invertible and non-invertible system. So what is meant by an invertible system first? Right, see the condition here. Suppose my input sequence is x of n and it is applied to a system, and the transformed output is some transformation of x of n. Right, this is our y of n. For suppose if this output is applied to another system, so that my final output is equal to exact original input x of n, and then this system is invertible. That means, see the definition here, the system is said to be invertible only if an inverse system exists, which when cascaded with the original system produces an output equal to the input of the first system. So that is the condition for invertibility. Otherwise it is said to be non-invertible system. Okay, next one, last one, FAR and IAR systems. These are also very important in our DSP, that is IAR and FAR filters. They comes under FAR and IAR systems. Now what is meant by FAR system? That is finite impulse response system. The impulse response contains it is of finite duration, then that is called as finite impulse response system. And if it is having infinite duration, if the impulse response is of infinite duration, then the system is said to be IAR. Okay, that's all. That is the classification about systems. Now let us start the difference equation, solving of difference equation, which is represented. Yes. Hello.
Hello, sir.
Madam, next screen visible అవుతుందా?
ఇప్పుడు లేదు సార్, ఇందాక విజిబుల్ అయ్యింది సార్. అటెండ్ అవ్వు సార్. ఐఏఆర్ ఎఫ్ఐఆర్ కదా?
ఇప్పుడు వస్తుంది మేడం, చూడండి. సొల్యూషన్స్ ఆఫ్ LCCD.
ఓకే సార్.
Okay, right. Okay, then coming to the LTI system. An LTI system can be represented by using a linear constant coefficient difference equation. You know this one, right? What is the equation here? Y of n is equal to y of n plus summation over k is equal to 1 to n ak y of n minus k is equal to summation k is equal to 0 to m bk x of n minus k. This is called as linear constant coefficient difference equation, right? So now this is the representation of an LTI system. Suppose I want to find the solution of this difference equation. And then how can you find the solution of this difference equation? Basically we have two methods, that is direct method and indirect method. In direct method we are going to find this solution by using homogeneous solution and particular solution. In indirect method we are going to find the solution by using Z transformation method, right? Now let us see the first method, that is the direct method. In a direct method we are assuming that our solution contains y of n is equal to sum of homogeneous and particular solution. It is the sum of homogeneous and particular solution. Now how to find this homogeneous solution? Yes, by simply equating this equation, the left hand side of the equation is equal to 0, then you are finding the response of that system, right? Like this. There is a procedure for this one. See, assuming that input x of n is equal to 0 and output y of n is equal to some lambda power n or r power n, right? We have assumed this type of solution. This may be the solution of the given difference equation. If it is actual solution, it must satisfy the LCCDE, that is linear constant quotient difference equation. So that's why I am substituting this y of n in the actual equation y of n. Then after that you will get a polynomial, and after that by finding the roots of the polynomial you will get some r1, r2 and r3. If they are roots of that polynomial, depending upon the nature of these roots, here the roots may be different or roots may be equal, right? They may be complex. There are different cases. Depending upon the type of roots, we are going to assume the solution, that is homogeneous solution is equal to a into, that means some constant, into r1 power n plus b into r2 power n plus c into r3 power n plus up to so on, depending upon the number of roots. Similarly, if the roots are equal, then we have to assume the solution, homogeneous solution, like this, that is y h of n is equal to this one. So after that we can find the homogeneous solution. Later we need to find the particular solution. Then how can you find the particular solution here? See, based on input, write the particular solution. So that means here in this case the input is assumed, right? In the previous case, that means homogeneous solution case, we are taking the input as 0. So that is also called as zero input response. So now we are going to find the response of the system for a particular given input. So if your input is equal to some delta of n, then yp of n is equal to 0. That is, your particular solution must be in this form. And then if x of n is equal to u of n, yp of n is equal to some k. If it is in this form, a power n u of n, then yp of n is equal to some k into a power n, like that. So now after that we are going to find this k value by using some initial conditions, right? Now what is the total solution? The total solution will be equal to sum of homogeneous and particular solution. So after that we will find the constants a, b and c. So this is called as direct method. Because of shortage of time, I am not giving any example. Please practice those examples according to this procedure. Just I am reviewing those concepts already we have discussed in our class. All right. Then coming to the next one, that is jet transformation method. Okay, see here. By using jet transforms also we can find the response, that is indirect method. You know the definition of its Z transform of a given sequence x of n, that is jet transform of x of n is equal to x of z. A bilateral Z transform, that is summation n equal to minus n to infinity x of n z power minus n. By using this Z transform, we are going to find the response of the solution of the given difference equation. These are the properties of jet transform, you know that. Let's move on to the direct solution. By using these properties, we can find okay. Now let us see the solution of difference equation by using Z transform. So here the solution is very simple. Just apply Z transform on both sides for the given difference equation. Now you are going to find the y of z, right? And the system function is given as h of z is equal to y of z by x of z. Okay. So after solving this y of z, you will get a function like this, which is ratio of numerator polynomial and denominator polynomial. And you can find the partial fractions for that, and you can find the inverse transform for that one, inverse Z transform, and after that you can find the output y of n. So that is a Z transform method, solution of difference equation by using Z transform method, right? And one more thing we are going to focus, what is the frequency response of the LTI system? So how can you find the frequency response of an LTI system? Yes, frequency domain representation. Suppose in the frequency domain, I want to analyze my LTI system. Then I can find the frequency response. So how can you find the frequency response? Similar to your Fourier transform in continuous time case, we can also have the discrete time Fourier transform, which is applied for discrete time sequences to represent the sequence in frequency domain. So the transform is called as discrete time Fourier transform, that is DTFT. So what is the definition of DTFT? DTFT of x of n is equal to x of e power j omega. That is equal to summation over n is equal to minus infinity to infinity x of n into e power minus j omega en. So that means your signal is completely converted into a frequency domain. So now you can obtain the spectrum here, DTFT spectrum, x of e power j omega. Basically, it is a complex quantity. It has both magnitude and phase, right? So that's why I'm representing x of e power j omega is equal to some real part plus imaginary part. So for that, I'm going to find the magnitude. What is the modulus of x of e power j omega? Square root of a square plus b square. That means square root of a real part square plus imaginary part square. You know that one, right? What is this one? This is called as magnitude spectrum. Similarly, we can have the phase spectrum also. Angle x of e power j omega is equal to tan inverse of imaginary part by the real part. So now if you plot the response, then we can obtain the phase spectrum. By varying different values of omega, by taking different values of omega, we can obtain different phase angles, and we can plot that. We can obtain the phase spectrum in this case. Now, what is the property of this DTFT is? So if you observe the DTFT, basically it is a continuous function of omega, which is having some period 2 pi. See the property of DTFT here. All right. Similarly, we can obtain the inverse DTFT by using this expression x of n is equal to 1 by 2 pi integral minus pi to pi x of e power j omega n. All right. Now let us see some of the properties of DTFT, like time shifting property, time scaling, frequency shifting. Okay, some properties are there. You know that linearity property. DTFT of x1 of n is equal to x1 of e power j omega, and DTFT of x2 of n is equal to x2 of e power j omega. Then what is the DTFT of some constant a into x1 of n plus b into x2 of n is equal to a x1 of e power j omega plus b x2 of e power j omega. You know the proofs. This one, this is the linearity property. Just go through these properties of DTFT. They are important. Linearity property. Next, shifting property. Frequency shifting property, time reversal property, all this. Right. Now let us see the important property, one more important property of DTFT, that is periodic property. So basically this discrete time Fourier transform is periodic in nature, that is a continuous function of omega, which is having time period 2 pi. That means it is going to repeat itself at regular intervals of time with the period 2 pi. So this is one more important property of DTFT. Remember this always. DTFT is a continuous spectrum, not discrete spectrum. One more property, that is convolution property. Just go through these properties. The first unit, these are the concept related to our first unit. And that is, we have seen introduction to digital signal processing, discrete time signals, sequences, classification, and all this we have completed. Frequency domain representation means by using DTFT and all this. By using Z transforms also, solution of difference equations using Z transforms, and system function. You know the system function h of z equal to y of z by x of z. Already we have obtained this. Next, coming to the second unit, that is discrete Fourier series and Fourier transforms. So what is meant by a Fourier series? Yes, similar to your continuous time case, any periodic signal can be represented in terms of a Fourier series, right? Similar to our continuous time case, in a discrete time case also we can represent periodic signal, discrete time periodic signal in terms of a Fourier series, which is called as discrete Fourier series, right? You know the properties of Fourier series also, right? Then coming to the DFT. What is meant by DFT? Discrete Fourier transform. Basically, we have seen the discrete time Fourier transform. What is DTFT? DTFT represents the frequency domain representation of a discrete time sequence x of n. Then what is discrete? What is DFT? A discrete Fourier transform. So actually, we perform these all digital signal processing algorithms or digital signal operations on a computer, right? By implementing some software algorithms. So if you want to perform operations by using this DTFT, it is a tedious job. Why? Because it is a if you see the property of DTFT, it is a continuous function, right? It is a continuous periodic function of omega, which is having some period 2 pi, and the spectrum is continuous. So if you want to process on our DSP processor or a DSP system, it is difficult to process that continuous function. So that's why we are going to convert that continuous to discrete time by using a sampling process, by performing some sampling process, which is called DFT, discrete Fourier transform. So discrete Fourier transform is nothing but the sampling of discrete time Fourier transform, sampled version of discrete time Fourier transform. So DFT is basically, it is having n number of samples over a single period, some 0 to 2 pi. So that's why we are defining the discrete Fourier transform as x of k is equal to summation over n is equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of n e power minus j 2 pi by n into nk, where k takes the values from 0 to n minus 1. Now let us see some properties of DFT. So as we have already defined this discrete Fourier transform as DFT of x of n is equal to some x of k summation over n is equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of n e power minus j 2 pi by n into nk. See here. So actually, for simplification purpose, I am taking this e power minus j 2 pi by n as this Twiddle factor wn. So where wn is equal to e power minus j హలో
హలో సార్ వాయిస్
మేడం వాయిస్ వినిపిస్తుందా మేడం?
ఇప్పుడు వాయిస్ కట్ అయింది సార్ కొంచెం సేపు ఒక 2 minutes.
ఓకే ఓకే ఇప్పుడు ఓకే కదా?
ఓకే సార్.
Okay, so that is the definition of discrete Fourier transform, right? Similarly, we can have the inverse discrete Fourier transform. IDFT of x of k is equal to, that is x of n is equal to 1 over n summation k is equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of k wn power minus nk. Okay. So now how to perform this DFT? So these are some of the properties of Twiddle factor. Later we will use these properties of Twiddle factor in FFT, that is fast Fourier transform. And this DFT also we have properties, so linearity property, next time shifting property, frequency shifting property, convolution property, all this, right? Similar to your DTFT, just go through this properties, conjugate property, all this. So any operation which we are performing on the signal is just to extract the information, right? Just remember that these are all mathematical operations we are going to perform by using our DSP system, digital signal processing system. In convolution property, frequency convolution property, you just go through this, just properties of this DFT. Coming to the DFT and a fast Fourier transform. One more important topic is that is a fast Fourier transform. So what is the drawback in DFT is if you are going to perform this DFT operations on your computer or DSP processor, it is going to be difficult, or it may become complex as the length of the sequence increases. It involves in large number of computations, right? Large number of computations like multiplications, complex multiplications, and complex additions like that. See. So in fast Fourier transform, actually fast Fourier transform is a computer algorithm which is used to simplify this DFT computation, right? If you are performing this direct DFT computation on your computer, it may take a large amount of time. Why? Because it involves so many operations like complex multiplications called complex additions. So many complex calculations are there. So to just speed up the operation, I'm going to implement this fast Fourier transform algorithm. You know that one, FFT, that is called as FFT, right? So how this complexity is reduced? Just look into this. Suppose I'm going to compute an endpoint DFT, that is direct DFT computation. So how many number of complex additions are required here? That is capital N into n minus 1. And the number of complex multiplications required are n square. So to reduce those computations, I'm going to use fast Fourier transform method or algorithm. So now by using this fast Fourier transform algorithm, how can I reduce those additions and multiplications? So now number of complex additions required is equal to n log n base 2. Number of complex multiplications used are n by 2 log n base 2. Now in different cases, depending upon the n value, so how this complexity is reduced? See here. Suppose if you are computing your DFT at 4 points, that is n equal to 4, n point DFT, then complex additions required in direct computation is 12, multiplication 16, and FFT computation is 2, 8, and multiplications 4. So like that, as the n value increases, it becomes more complex. See here, large number of computations are required. But this can be drastically reduced by using this DFT computations. This will be helpful for fast computing of DFT, which saves us the time also. So that is the main aim of our FFT algorithm. So you know that what are the types of FFT algorithms? Basically, we have decimation in time and decimation in frequency FFT algorithms. So the main difference between DIT FFT and DIF FFT is, in DIT FFT, we are taking the input samples in bit reversal order, and finally we are going to obtain output in natural order, right? In DIF FFT, we are taking the input samples in natural order, and we are going to get the output samples in bit reversal order. That is the major difference between DIT FFT and DIF FFT. And one more thing, one more difference is, in DIT FFT algorithm, we are going to divide the entire sequence, endpoint sequence, into two n by 2 point sequences, which is odd sequence and even sequence. And coming to DIF FFT, we are going to divide two n by 2 sequences, and we are going to perform the n by 2 point DFTs individually and going to combine finally. And just go through this example, one of the example. You know these butterfly diagrams, signal flow graph, which is also called a signal flow graph. Yeah, see, this is actual implementation of DIT FFT, decimation in time, fast decimation in time Fourier transform method, that is DIT FFT method, fast Fourier transform method. So here input is taken in bit reversal order, x of 0, x of 4, like that. Finally, you are going to get output in natural order, right? And the entire sequence, 8-point sequence, is divided into 4 2-point sequences in the first stage. And in the second stage, we are going to combine these 2 2-point sequences into one 4-point DFT and another 4-point DFT. Finally, these two 4-point DFTs are combined to get 8-point DFT. This is the basic architecture in DIT FFT, using radix to decimation in time fast Fourier transform method. Next, coming to DAF FFT. This is actual signal flow graph method. So here we are going to use the twiddle factor properties. As already we have seen these properties of twiddle factors, we are going to use those twiddle factor properties. Just I am calculating these twiddle factors. For the first stage, I need this W2 power 0, W2 power 0, that's all. In the second stage, I need these twiddle factors only, W4 power 0, W41, W41, that's all. Next, in the third stage, I need W80, W81, W82, W83. So like this, you are going to compute this DAT FFT. Just opposite to this one is the DAF FFT. Yes, this one. So this is your DAF FFT, decimation in frequency, fast Fourier transform. Similarly, we can find the inverse Fourier transform also, IDFT, by using these algorithms. You know these derivations, all this one. Just I'm going through last, that is inverse FFT, inverse fast Fourier transform. So we know the definition of fast Fourier transform x of k, and inverse fast Fourier transform is x of n is equal to 1 over summation k is equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of k w n power minus nk. Okay, so in this case, simply we are finding this IDFT through either DAT FFT or DAF FFT, the same manner. And finally, we are going to obtain y of n is equal to DFT of x star of k. So here x star of k indicates the complex conjugate of this x of k. Okay, this is the actual procedure. Just go through this procedure. Then coming to the next concept. So we have completed this discrete Fourier series and Fourier transform also. Just you have to do is do more number of problems on this Fourier transform and fast Fourier transform concepts. Okay, because the time is getting 12:45, right? So now I'm going to end this concept. In the next week, we will discuss about the third unit, that is IR and FAR filters combinedly. No problem. I'm going to complete the remaining units in the later sessions. Okay, thanks for joining. So I will mail this material to you. No problem. I will put it in binder, collect from them. Thanks for joining. So anybody having doubts? Okay, nobody is having doubts. Okay, right. Okay, I'm going to share these slides in binder. Okay, no problem. Just go through this. Thank you. Thank you for joining this meeting. Goodbye. హలో
హలో సార్.
మేడం వినిపిస్తుందా?
వినిపిస్తుంది సార్. ఓకే సార్.
ఓకే మేడం, నెంబర్స్ నోట్ చేసుకున్నారా?
చేసుకున్నాను సార్. ఫస్ట్ 42 మెంబర్స్ జాయిన్ అయ్యారు.
ఓకే ఓకే.
ఫస్ట్ లో స్టార్టింగ్ లో, మిడిల్ లో 35, లాస్ట్ లో 32, 31. సార్
పర్లేదు మేడం. ఓకే ఓకే, థ్యాంక్ యూ. సరే, నాకు అది మెసేజ్ చేయండి. ఓకే మేడం.
ఓకే సార్.